my name's Paul Clark and I'm a member of Estuary Church, which is a part of the Estuary Group of churches. It's my privilege to bring you today's thought for the day, which I have entitled, With God There Is Always a Hope. In Joel chapter 2 verse 25, God says this, I will repay you for the years the locusts have eaten, the great locust and the young locust, the other locusts and the locust swarm, my great army that I sent among you. This is a picture I took of a locust. I found it in my apartment while I was on holiday in Greece. One was bad enough, but to be invaded by a swarm of them doesn't bear thinking about. When a swarm arrives, there's little that can be done to stop them. People desperately try, in vain, to save their land from the swarm as it threatens to devastate their livelihood, the only way they may have of feeding their families. It must be a nightmare. They're helpless to stop it, and they have to just stand by and watch as their fields and trees are stripped bare in front of their eyes. Locusts will devour everything in their path, leaving the place barren before moving on to the next feast. The verse I read is a promise from God to a nation after he has given them a warning about the forthcoming events. In chapter 1, verses 1 and 2, God says this to the people about what they're going to go through. Hear this, you elders, listen all who live in the land. Has anything like this ever happened in your days, or in the days of your ancestors? Tell it to your children, and let your children tell it to their children, and their children to the next generation. These words could so easily be speaking about the past year that we have faced, and the ongoing fallout from the pandemic that has ravaged our lives and left many of us feeling desolate. I'm quite sure we will be speaking of it to our children and their children, and for many generations to come. Everything those people knew was about to be changed. In Joel 2, verse 3, it says this, referring to the locust swarm. Before them, the land is like the Garden of Eden. Behind them, a desert waste. Nothing escapes from them. It then goes on in chapter 2 to talk about returning to the Lord, repenting, rending our hearts to God, and how then he may relent from sending calamity. Now, I'm by no means saying that the pandemic that we have been through has been sent by God, but he has allowed us to go through the past year for a reason. What I am saying is that if we believe in God and trust in him, he is able to take our bad situation and turn it around for our good. Perhaps if you get a chance, you could read the book of Joel. It's an incredible book in the Old Testament. It's only 3 chapters long, but it shows God's love, his compassion and his deliverance from what can only be described as a catastrophic disaster that faced these people. The following scripture many people will know well. It's often used to encourage those facing difficult times. Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. Putting this scripture into context, God spoke those words through Jeremiah to the Jews when, as a nation, they had been taken into captivity and faced 70 years in exile. Separation from the homeland that they loved, and an entirely different lifestyle from the one they had known before. To me, that doesn't sound like it's going to be a very prosperous time, or a time that's going to give anyone much hope of a future. God then goes on to say in verse 12 to 14, Then you will call upon me and come and pray to me, and I will listen to you. You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart. I will be found by you, declares the Lord, and will bring you back from captivity. I will gather you from all the nations and places where I have banished you, declares the Lord, and will bring you back to the place from which I carried you into exile. With all that these people were facing, and despite how desperate the situation looked to them, the Lord declared that the time would end in prosperity and blessing. We're clearly told in Numbers 23, verse 19, God is not a man that he should lie, not a human being that he should change his mind. Does he speak and then not act? Does he promise and not fulfill? It feels in many ways as though all we had has been devoured by a locust called COVID. We've watched helplessly as it swept through our nation, stripping us of our livelihoods, our health, and in many cases, life itself. We've been held captive by fear and led into exile. Everything familiar that made us feel secure is gone. Our lives have been changed beyond recognition, and many of us right now don't really have much hope for the future. I believe we can learn so much from the tough times written about in the Bible and the deliverance brought about by God. We see so many examples of people facing things that threaten to destroy the life that they know, changing their normal beyond recognition. We also see that when these times occur, God is always close at hand. He offers a way through the situation with a promise of better things to come. We have to try and find something positive within the devastating situation that we can hold on to and remember, so that from out of one of the hardest times that we faced in generations, we have the hope that will take us into a better future. I'd like to leave you with another passage of scripture which speaks of a very real hope for the future for those who know Jesus. It's Romans chapter 8, verses 18 to 25. I consider that our present sufferings are not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed in us. For the creation waits in eager expectation for the children of God to be revealed. For the creation was subject to frustration, not by its own choice, but by the will of the one who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself will be liberated from its bondage to decay and brought into the freedom and glory of the children of God. We know that the whole creation has been groaning as in the pains of childbirth right up to the present time. Not only so, but we ourselves, who have the first fruits of the Spirit, groan inwardly as we wait eagerly for our adoption to sonship, the redemption of our bodies. For in this hope we were saved. But hope that is seen is no hope at all. Who hopes for what they already have? But if we hope for what we do not have, we wait for it patiently. So I pray you will remember today that with God, there is always hope. Thank you for listening, and God bless you.